Hi, everyone. Luann Williams here. I'm really happy that you joined me for our top 10 trends for 2021. It's one of the most interesting and fun things that we do. We get tons of feedback and lots of interest in it. So we'll just kick it off. I'm going to spend about 20 minutes going through the top trends today, and I hope that everybody leaves with a lot of inspiration. So we always make our top 10 trend wheel that we call it. You can see the top 10 trends there. We also this year added a few tags to kind of add just another layer of kind of what we see related to this and how it fits into a bigger context. So I'm just going to go ahead and kick right off, and we're going to start with trend number 1, which is transparency triumphs. So I have a slide at the end where I'm going to talk a little bit about how we see trends layering up, and they overlap a lot. And it's, I say it, I think every year, trends don't stop on December 31st and start over on January 1st. But last year we talked about storytelling. That was our number 1 trend. And what we've seen over the past, really, you can see the little 2008 there, over the past 12 years since we've been talking about sustainability. This is a trend that brings in sustainability. It brings in clean label. It really did start with clean label. And 2006, I think, was the first year I heard people talking about kitchen cupboard ingredients. And what we've seen is that over that period of time, it's morphed and changed, and it gets bigger and bigger and umbrellas up to this trend that we have now, where we see that brands really do have to up their game when it comes to transparency. You can see there, we surveyed consumers in 10 countries, and we asked them, is it really important to know? What do you want to know? And they say, well, the product information is of major importance. I want to know what the product contains. They want to know how it's made. So it becomes a part of trust, but it also becomes a part of engagement. That if you do have a meaningful story, that you can connect with consumers in a very new and different way. So this is a very broad trend. We put a few examples on here. One is the Whopper, which now has the ingredients on the top of the label, which is really unusual in food service. There's a product there from France. I think it could not be more clear. The zero nitrites. You also see there's a map of France. There's the Nutri-Score labeling right there on the front, and the package is also clear. So there's lots of messaging, nothing being hidden in that package. Packaging technologies can also be part of this. Pepsi is leading the charge when it comes to this new digital watermark technology to try to help recycling as well. So these are just a few examples, but it's a huge trend, and it encompasses so many different things. And it's really easy for me to sit here and say, oh, everybody has to do this, but you do have to find a meaningful way to tell your stories that connect with consumers. Just breaking that down a little bit more, I mentioned that this really started with clean label, no additives, no preservatives, and we saw it change. We made a nice graphic there on the left-hand side that just to show how it was an evolution over time. And we went through, short ingredients, simplicity, and now we really do see a lot more. Every year it breaks into 1,000 small niches, but a lot more communication around human or animal welfare, supply chain. And again, as I mentioned, sustainability. And you can see there that 3 in 5 global consumers tell us that learning more about where their food comes and how it's made is really important, and that they're interested in it. In terms of meaningful storytelling, here's a nice example from Danone. This is a yogurt that was launched with fruits from here. And you can see the here all over the map there. Really nice illustration of the origin of the different fruit products from all around France, but that's a fantastic way to connect with, in this case, with French consumers. So really interesting trend, and it'll be fun to see what kinds of things we see happening this year. The next trend is about plant-based. So plant forward. And again, we've been talking about plant-based for a few years in our top 10 trends. You can see there in 2019, we talked about the plant kingdom. Last year, we described it as a revolution, and now we just really see it's marching forward. It really encompasses, again, many categories, many different types of products. I think I've never seen anything move bigger so fast in my 25 years plus of experience. It is moving much more mainstream. We're seeing it move also more indulgence. into more indulgent areas. And I think this is going to be just such a super interesting year to watch and see what happens. We also see what's happening with the cellular technologies, and where will those fit into the whole plant-based, or will they maybe take the place of some of them, or be bigger than some of the plant options? But again, in terms of the diversification of this trend, this year we're seeing a lot of interesting developments in fish alternatives, but also in snacking. You can see Chobani also came out with a plant-based beverage, lots and lots of different meat alternatives, egg alternatives. So yeah, just super interesting trend, and we don't see it slowing down anytime soon. I think what is interesting this year is to also look and see what's happening in different regions around the world. So there are definitely some differences, and we kind of made a joke here between Earth and space. There was a proof of concept last year looking at 3D printing of meat, and also growing meat under, either zero gravity or less gravity. But back to Earth, we are seeing regional differences. I mean, we see a huge number of meat alternatives, dairy alternatives, especially in Europe and in the US. We see, again, they're, crossing more subcategories every year. So there's a nice example of the Beyond Meat breakfast sausage. The Gut and Brain is a plant-based beverage for healthy aging. We've seen really interesting repositioning as margarine, as plant butter, basically. But I think it's maybe some of the more interesting areas. The fish alternative in Brazil, I think, is very interesting. If you ask me where we would see this, I don't know that I would say Brazil would be, if I would name it in the top few countries, but that's also very interesting. But I think Asia, and especially China, is super interesting. I think everybody's aware of what's been happening with pork prices over the past 18 months or so, and it's a huge opportunity for Omniport, for example. So again, there's different regional drivers, there's different consumer aspects to this, but again, an absolutely phenomenal trend that's going to just go from strength to strength this year. Trend number 3, tailored to fit. Some of you who have listened to me speak over the years have heard me say, I'm sure many times, that I think gluten-free was really the first trend where consumers got an idea, well, the way I eat can really make me feel different to the way other people eat. So now we see consumers want everything tailored. Our entertainment is tailored. We can order, clothes anywhere, and food is just the same. So I think, again, we've been talking about personalized nutrition, I think, for 15 years, and now we really see things really starting to take off. So you can see there, 64% of consumers say, I've found more ways to tailor my life and the products I buy to my individual styles, beliefs, and needs. So this can also go back to trend number 1. It can also be about, maybe if I care a lot about animal welfare, I could have a whole diet around the different things that I care about, or different brands that are meeting those kind of needs for me. But it can also be very personal in terms of health. Nestle has launched a product in China called Nesquino. That's a personalized solution. It's a drink, a beverage, and a little machine. You can see the picture there. So that is, of course, a really interesting example. But also just thinking about lifestyle in general, that there are now more lifestyle nutrition services. A nice one there, a nice example, these bars they're plant-based and contain adaptogens, and it's all related to stress. You get a little tracker that you wear, and it tests all your vital signs related to stress. So that's a super specific one. But if you look back, and there on the left-hand side is the results of a consumer survey. We asked consumers, how would you prefer to have your nutritional experience personalized? So nutrition is number 1. Based on my lifestyle, I mentioned you could be an ethical consumer and have a whole diet around there. Also based on my body composition. So, and I think if you think about something like keto, that's definitely a diet that's targeted, more based on body composition. We've also seen a massive growth from a small base, but huge growth in products that are targeted for the keto consumer. And you can see also a lot of still very strong growth in plant-based as well. So again, very interesting trend to watch and to see what else we see this year. Trend number 4 is omnichannel eating. I haven't talked very much about COVID yet, but again, we could overlap. We could do a whole, how does COVID impact the top 10 trends, and have a whole discussion about that. But I think this is one that I think we all can understand the very direct impact that the pandemic had on this trend, even though it was already happening. We're seeing more and more overlap between food service and retail, but consumers really can't eat what they want, when they want, where they want it. You can see there that a third of consumers in those 10 countries that we surveyed said that they ordered more online from restaurants for home delivery over the past year. I know that there's local restaurants where I live that will also make the food and you can take it home and cook it at home. And of course, we've seen, curbside delivery, all kinds of takeout, but you can also, well, even the Impossible Burger is a nice example. Started out in food service, and now you can also cook with the meat at home. So again, there's lots of ways to take advantage of this trend. Also looking at what type of experience through this trend. So it addresses convenience, new experiences, but also accessible indulgence. So 3 nice examples here that consumers said, I did more home cooking using convenient or meal solutions in the past year. There's a really nice example of a beef and vegetable meal kit from Korea. Consumers also told us that when I'm trying new types of food and beverages, I like having a familiar element. So this is a nice example of a very familiar flavor in a potato chip. And then restaurants are now also making their food available also through retail channels. So the consumers told us that restaurant branded products are also a convenient way to get the restaurant experience at home. And this is a beetroot tzatziki from a restaurant in the UK called Leon. I've also seen examples of seasoning kits that restaurants are selling. So there's lots of different ways to do this, but I think this will never go away. Consumers are definitely going to expect more and more access to the food they want anytime, anywhere. Okay, another one that again we can say there was probably a lot of interest around immunity, and COVID really, put an even bigger spotlight on this. So again, you can see 60% of consumers said, I am increasingly looking for food and beverage products that support my immune health. And some nice examples there. Again, you also see it crossing categories. It's not just, I always think about beverages and dairy, but here's a beverage, an example of an oatmeal porridge and a dairy alternative, all with, you can see right on the front of the pack, there's absolutely no confusion around that. These are all targeting immunity. And again, there's lots of ways to do this. Also thinking about how do we wind all these trends together. So even in terms of plant-based, we've seen an increased interest in botanical ingredients. So they're very functional. They give flavor, taste, color, also health benefits. And 54% of consumers said that due to COVID, they have now spent time educating themselves on ingredients and procedures or things that can help boost their immunity. They're doing things like getting more sleep, they're being more active physically, but also choosing foods that are naturally high in nutrients. And that includes vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. So this also goes back to, again, another trend that we've been talking about is inherent nutrition. So it's really, immunity will be a big focus of this. And we picked out a couple of products there. One has elderberry as a beneficial botanical ingredient, and the other one has ginger. So again, lots of opportunities in this space. So trend number 6, nutrition hacking. So we see now that technology is also addressing the demands of products that have the enhanced nutritional value or sustainability or some type of ethical impact. 4 in 5 consumers told us, I believe in progress in food and beverages through science. That's fantastic for those of us who've been very concerned about how science has kind of been beat up, but really interesting to see some developments there and interest from consumers. The Chobani example is a great one, that this is, it's a new product that's almost like a medical nutrition or a clinical nutrition product. Again, lots of active ingredients there, but again, making that more nutrition overall, kind of solving the nutrition puzzle, as Chobani says. So this is also, technology is also kind of driving this trend. So it really is looking at how do you leverage the best of both worlds for consumers. So we ask consumers, I'm prepared to compromise on naturalness for a product that fits my needs. And you can see a lot of consumers agree or strongly agree, and only a few disagree. So we're super interested to see what other types of ingredients will be used. We're seeing increased interest in adaptogens. I've been talking about the botanicals already, the plant-based, that's very interesting there. And then we also see Arla here developing the first clean label ambient yogurt. So that's something that's also a technology breakthrough and something quite different, but it can also make nutrition a lot more accessible for a lot of consumers. Trend number 7. I think this is also a really interesting trend. We talked about mood last year as well, but we've also been talking about this more holistic dimension of health, that consumers, what I eat is good for me, but what I eat is good for me. So it really does combine the best of both worlds. So we ask consumers, what have you been doing to improve your health and well-being by different types of actions? 53% said I've been looking after my physical well-being. That was followed by mental and emotional well-being, and then spiritual well-being. So again, it's very holistic. Again, adaptogens are now being promoted as, having all kinds of benefits when it comes to reducing stress, to mental well-being as well. And a nice example there, Coca-Cola has a snackable drink that also makes your skin glow, and has botanicals, collagen, but also GABA to promote sleep. So we talk a lot about occasions like breakfast and snacking, but mood could be a new occasion. I think sleep could also be a new occasion. So we're looking at some of these emerging mood platforms. So energy, relaxation are kind of well established, also small but growing. But some of the new ones could be sleep. And you can see that we're seeing, again, from a very tiny base, a lot more products promoting sleep. Here's a nice example of a beverage with blackberry and lavender flavor, and it's supposed to contains theanine and magnesium also to help aid sleep. I think maybe 15 years ago, we saw products, especially from Japan, that really promoted sleep. So I think as our world has gotten more busy and stressful, it'll be interesting to see what other types of foods are going to be positioned towards this trend. Trend number 8, product mashups, when trends collide. So this is a very fun, indulgent kind of storytelling, discovery type of trend as well. We've talked about hybrid innovation in the past few years, but we're now seeing how this really take off to create products that are very exciting for consumers. So again, you can see 60% of consumers said, I'm interested in trying new sensory experiences. That can be taste, flavor, texture, color. The unicorn is probably the poster child product for this. But again, here's also a super interesting, the world's first startup dedicated to flavored eggs. It really does create a new category, but if you eat eggs, why would you not want to try that? So really interesting. Foodservice is another channel for this hybrid innovation. We saw a drinkable pizza from Pizza Hut there. Dunkin' Donut now experimenting or cooperating with the cereal companies to make a Dunkin' coffee flavored cereal, and then an ice cream that's edible. It looks more like a pizza. So again, these types of products, again, if you go back to our first trend, looking at transparency, but also those stories to engage consumers with, it can also just be around super fun things like this. Okay, the next trend is modern nostalgia. And I think this one is also very interesting because we see huge interest in provenance, where products come from. I think now when you're uncertain, and this is, I think, another interesting COVID kind of angle, that we yearn for safety and security. But it's also, if you ever go back to that, old restaurant from your teenage years. It can be a bit sad if it hasn't been made a little bit more modern and relevant. So that's what this trend is about. It's about maybe things that are global trends that get a local makeover, or it's something that makes me feel safe and secure, but it's modernized as well. So you can see McDonald's has launched a vegetarian version of the McCroquette. This traditionally has a really soft meat filling, but now, and it's something that every Dutch person knows and eats at parties and so on. But again, that's a very modern take on it by making it plant-based. And then a nice example of reimagining flavors, looking at very exotic ingredients, but in a very familiar product. So this is red shiso. So it's a traditional drink, but now with yuzu and apple, it's a new twist on the flavor to create something that is very different. And again, you can see 2 in 5 American consumers said that they would be interested in trying this flavor. So again, that also feeds into this whole discovery and gives you a big opportunity for storytelling as well. Looking at how you can cross categories with this, because that's how things go really, really big, is when they can cross categories. So here is an example of a ketchup based on a very popular Bloody Mary mix called the Big Tom. And then here is a sparkling cold brewed tea, which really fits into this kind of healthy alcohol or alcohol-like type of product. There's lots of alcohol-free wines and sparkling wines and liqueurs and so on. So you get kind of a champagne experience, but from a cold brew tea product. Okay, and our last trend is age of the influencer. And again, we thought we had to take a look at really what is influencing consumers to try things. We think that there's a shift, maybe a slow shift to more reliable influencers. Last night on TV, there was a documentary on TikTok and about influencers and just how it all works. It's really interesting when it's outside of your world. I've never made a TikTok video, but now I've seen a group of people who have, and what happens, and it even surprises them. But obviously there's a digital transformation that's really transforming everything around food as well. So again, that can also be in some of the, as we said, data-driven consumer profiling, and you look for the opportunity, and then you come out with a group that can either test or promote it. We ask consumers, what online sources of inspiration do you use when you're purchasing foods and beverages? And again, you can see TV is still really important in some countries, and cookbooks and TV chefs and so on, but increasingly this is becoming very digitally driven. I know my Chinese colleagues will tell me how fast things spread around. If there's, a limited edition noodles at 7-Eleven, that it'll just be sold out instantly because it'll just fly around China on WeChat until it's sold out. So you all know. 2 in 5 consumers do tell us that they don't believe vloggers, bloggers, or influencers are honest. So I think this is interesting. I do follow some different groups on social media also to see, there's a farm babe now, there's a food science babe. So there are, I would say, more science-based influencers, I think, that are probably having a little bit more influence now. So I think we're in kind of a bit of a change period, that we've had the extreme on one side, and now maybe it's slowly going back to consumers figuring out who they do trust. We know that in China that there's a lot of key opinion consumers that really go into a lot of detail. You can see the nice picture there and the videos they're very, very detailed. And then I think on the other side of that is looking at, here's a protein bar brand, which is really inspired by real women. I think Dove did this really well a few years ago on the personal care side. And here's a nice example also on the food side. So that's the trends. And now I mentioned that I had a couple of slides looking at how trends are interconnected. And again, I just took a couple from last year. The storytelling winning with words was our #1 trend. We also talked about sustainability. And those two now are kind of layered up and fall under that really big transparency triumphs umbrella. And it's the same case with also plant-based. We've followed the development of plant over time, and also the personalized eating and the tailored to fit. You can see really is built on the Right Bite and also the Eating for Me over the past couple of years. So I just want to maybe just explain a bit or reassure you that we do follow the trends over time. We look at how they are changing, how we expect them to change. And I say it all the time, we want to prove it with a number. So we always make sure that our trends are rooted in consumer data, but also in data from this massive online database that we have. So that everything that we give you, we're not just sitting around thinking of what cool things can we talk about. They are really rooted in the best data that you can have to make good decisions. I have 2 more slides just to introduce one more topic. We cover our top 10 trends every year, but we also do macro trends. So we have a global megatrend report, and we have a consumer lifestyle themes report that we make that have been updated for 2021. They really do root the trends that you've seen today into this bigger context of, we have 5 consumer lifestyle trends, like if it's about, sustainable living, or considered consumption is one, for example, digital lives is another one. And then these global megatrends. We've really focused on 6 for the 2021 report, looking at transformation age. Again, that affects the whole digital and technology changes that we see happening in the connected world. But the ones that are there highlighted in orange. So if you're interested in learning more about our megatrends and our vertical intelligence capabilities, you can just email sales@innovami.com, and somebody will get in touch with you really quickly to tell you more about it. So that's our time for today. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you're leaving with a lot of inspiration.